A game I've been looking forward to is Kandagawa Jet Girls. As some of you know, it's done by Kenichiro Takaki, the producer of Senran Kagura. Basically, the formula is as follows. You take Wave Race, combine it with Mario Kart Double Dash, and throw in the water guns from Peach Beach Splash. In theory, that sounds like a great combination of things for anime fan service enthusiasts, but I think this game doesn't quite live up to expectations. Kandagawa Jet Girls isn't as refined in comparison to the Senran Kagura games, nor does it have the fan service, though it is clear that they are related. I ended up getting the PS4 version because I wanted the limited edition. Content-wise, the Steam and PS4 games are the same, and we'll look at the limited edition at the end of the video. So let's start with the game's premise. The main protagonists are a pair of girls, Rin, an upbeat and cheerful girl, and Misa, a serious-looking girl who is in actuality someone who just doesn't display that much emotion. They end up jet racing together and eventually agree to try and win the Kandagawa Cup. Unlike Senran Kagura, which went through a lot of effort to explain the in-game universe, Kandagawa Jet Girls does not. Why is jet racing so prominent, and why do they do it all the time? It's almost like, you know how in fighting games when they just start fighting over some small argument or something? Also, how do they bring their jet skis with them if they're just roaming around through town? You do learn more about the characters as you follow the story, but it's also simple and lacking in depth. It's not like it's detrimental to the game's enjoyment though, but don't expect anything groundbreaking. It does get a bit better when you unlock the other storylines because you get to know the other characters more, which makes them seem less generic. There's a varied cast. Each pair of girls is a jet racing team. Our protagonists make up the Kandagawa Jet Girls. The other pairs are based on popular character types, and like I said, they all have their own unlockable stories too. The gameplay is a mishmash of a bunch of different games. Obviously, there's the wave race style bit. Kandagawa Jet Girls also borrows heavily from Mario Kart and similar arcade racers with boost pads and power-ups. Like with Mario Kart Double Dash, you also have two characters on one jet ski. Drifting around corners gives you a boost, which there's 3 stages of, which also should look familiar. If you ever take it off any sweet jumps, you can do tricks. You do that by flicking the 2 analog sticks either together or in opposite directions. Depending on what you do, you get a different trick. There's 4 overall, with 3 regular ones and 1 being a special one. The special trick is different depending on the characters you're using, and even if you have the same characters but in switched positions, the trick will be different again. Different tricks give you different effects during a race, like for example, temporary speed boosts or invulnerability. There's also other game mechanics related to how the watercraft behaves. For example, you can lean back and forth. Leaning back increases your speed but makes the jet ski understeer. Leaning forward slows you down but you get better turn-in. There's also different weapon types which you get by hitting the item boxes. You can shoot forward or look back and shoot at opponents while the AI does the driving. Every jet machine has a Halo-style shield. After taking several hits, the shield will break, and then you slow right down for a bit until the shield regenerates. There's also something called special techniques. There's 9 altogether, with 8 corresponding to the 8 weapon types and 1 being non-weapon specific. The effects or attacks can be things like guided missiles or a buffed shield. You can activate them once your EPD gauge is full. The gauge will fill up over time, but doing tricks and drifts among other things will bring up the gauge faster. There's actually a lot of mechanics and there's some I haven't even talked about, but you probably don't have to utilize a lot of them most of the time because the game is way too easy. This is the worst part of the game by far. Yes, the game does get a bit more difficult a few races in, and you can just, not upgrade your jet ski if you want some sort of challenge, but the controls are still kinda clunky. The jet machines aren't very responsive and generally just feels, heavy. It's like Mario Kart with trucks or something. That being said, leaning the nose forward works quite well to alleviate understeer, but maybe it's just me, but it doesn't feel intuitive to control. To get the highest ranking for each chapter, you have to fulfill 3 different criteria, which is different for each race. For example, you have to win, use a couple of weapon items, or maintain a certain speed. Whatever it may be, if you tick all the boxes, then you unlock an item. When it comes to difficulty, multiplayer is a different story. Because it's not AI you're up against, things of course are going to be more competitive, and jet machine parts and upgrades, as well as game mechanics discussed earlier, will be much more important than in single player mode. There's 2 multiplayer modes, ranked and casual. There's nothing really fancy going on with, different game modes or anything, but you might have trouble finding other players to race against. I've only managed to race once in multiplayer. It was a ranked race with only one other person, who by the way platinumed the game, so that didn't end well for me at all. I didn't have my game capture connected, so I don't have any footage of that race, but to be honest, there isn't really much to witness other than my crushing defeat. There's other game modes I want to talk about, but we'll look at those a little bit later in the video. For now, let's talk about graphics. Overall, when you're jetting around, the game doesn't look that great. The tracks are quite flat in terms of shading, and the water just doesn't look as watery as one would expect. I do think the tracks are designed well enough. Each track is based on various rivers in Tokyo. Actually, the topic of Tokyo rivers is pretty fascinating itself as a subject. There's a Japanology episode about rivers, which you can find here on YouTube somewhere. Each course has usually a couple of different layouts as well as time of day variations. The course designs differ with the kind of jumps and things they have on them. In that regard, it's not bad at all. They also try to give each course a different look, so that you can identify where in Tokyo you are based on the appearance of your surroundings. It's done in a bit of a cartoony way, so don't expect total accuracy, but you'll see things like Tokyo Tower and Skytree. And also during the tutorial, you can see that the course is right in Tokyo Bay because you can see the Rainbow Bridge, that giant Ferris wheel in Odaiba, and the air inlet thing for that really long tunnel, which I forgot the name of. So the environments aren't exactly a standout part of the game from a technical standpoint, but there's enough creativity and effort when it comes to layout and design of the courses. The character models, however, are really good in every way. It's very much noticeable if you look at the Senran Kagura characters. If you compare them to the Senran Kagura games, the difference is quite obvious. There's even proper butt jiggle physics I noticed, but looking past that we can see an improvement in polygon count, and the shading is quite different too. It's more stylized, which works because it looks more anime-like. Something I've noticed about Kenichiro Takaki is that he manages to find artists with unique art styles for his games. Senran Kagura and Valkyrie Drive have all very recognizable art styles, and that's the same as well with Kandagawa Jet Girls. I like that. The Senran Kagura comparisons continue with the cutscenes. There's new animations. I don't know if they can be considered better, but at least being different is already a good enough thing. They're a bit exaggerated, which is funny. It's a bit like those HoloLive sketches with all the overdone motions. Another amusing thing is that occasionally two characters will talk to each other, be on the same screen, but not look at each other. The menus have a really cool style to them. They remind me of a few of the older fighting games. There's a lot of flat colors being used, a bit like KOF 11, but there's more fancy shapes and stuff going on. I think it's really cool how they are animated, but it does take time to navigate between the various screens. It's not as fast as I would like, and I think the animations are trying to mask some loading that the PS4 has to do. Speaking of PS4, like I said, that's what I have the game for. Loading times are a bit longer than I'd hope, basically everywhere, going from one place to another in the menu as well as loading tracks. The game tries to hit 60 FPS when it can, and yeah, that's not really common at all though. Expect a 30-ish FPS experience with the occasional 60 FPS burst that basically only happens when you're like staring at a wall or something. Kandagawa Jet Girls has various game modes. There's story mode. There you first only get access to the Kandagawa Jet Girls story, but after about half a dozen or so races, more stories open up for selection. Each story isn't just a collection of races, but also an insight into the characters. Each chapter has set characters, but you can replay every story race after completing it with whatever characters you want. Other than that, there's also free mode where you can run custom races with characters, jet machines, and tracks you've unlocked so far. There's also a difficulty option. If you haven't upgraded your jet ski that much, then putting the difficulty to the hardest can actually be impossible to win because they'll be so much faster than you. Winning races, regardless if it's in free race or story mode, actually doesn't earn you that much money, so you're going to have to play mini-games to buy parts, clothing, and whatever it may be that you want. The game calls these extracurriculars, and there's 4 of them overall: jet machine washing, mopping, treadmill run, and aerials. And all of them have 3 difficulty levels. Jet machine cleaning is like a rhythm game without the rhythm. Rather than following a song or something like that, you just try to hit the buttons that you see on the screen as fast as possible. Combo length is what's important. In the hardest difficulty, it's possible to consistently get over 100,000 points, or just under if you make a mistake or two. In the mopping minigame, you try and hit all the puddles with your mop while trying to avoid the pylons. They do give you points, but they slow you right down. During Fever Time, which activates after a while, you can knock down the cones without slowing down. This is another one which I like to do at the hardest difficulty because you can pretty consistently rake in about maybe 80 to 100,000 points without that much effort. Treadmill is one I don't do too often because it's such a button masher. It's quite tiring and I don't want to end my controller either. Basically, you want to collect as many hearts as possible without going too fast or too slow and falling off the treadmill. And you tap a button to slow down and another one to speed up. You can see the trajectory of the hearts and therefore plan where you need to be in advance, though the harder the difficulty, the faster everything is. The last minigame is called Aerials. Believe it or not, you actually use your jet machine here. Here you try and do tricks to get points, and there's also various rings you can drive through to gain more points as well. One annoying thing is that every alternate color for an outfit or an item costs money. Once you've got all of them, you can unlock a glossy version for each color. Something that's quite interesting is how you can change a lot of the colors, like skin tone and eye colors, for example. So you can really customize the hell out of the characters in this game. Speaking of characters, you can buy Senran Kagura characters as DLC. Things can get really expensive though. All characters cost $40. Now that is Canadian dollars, but that's still expensive no matter, what you convert it to. With that, you get the characters and a selection of clothes and accessories that the characters wear. Overall, I feel that Kandagawa Jet Girls is lacking in two specific departments: gameplay refinement and fan service. It doesn't need fan service if the gameplay was good, but the gameplay is just too easy and clunky, which is a bit of a strange combination of attributes. I hoped at least that there would be a good amount of fan service, because that would have been good for people who are into that, but sadly there isn't that much to be found here. Kandagawa Jet Girls very much feels related to Senran Kagura, the way the menus are laid out, the way the games look, and numerous other small things like that. So if you are familiar with Senran Kagura, Kandagawa Jet Girls just feels cut down. No wet clothes or clothes tearing off is a big one. In fact, the Kandagawa Jet Girls anime does have clothes being torn off, just like Senran Kagura, so no matter how you look at it, we can consider that as something that's missing here. And also the mini-games. I do like the idea of them, but the sort of funny and quirky fan service that you normally see in Kenichiro Takaki's games just isn't here. I think that's a real shame, because that's one of the big appeals of his games. High-effort fan service combined with decent gameplay, but this game just doesn't have either. Alright, let's take a look at the limited edition, which is called the Racing Hearts Edition. It's quite compact overall in size. It's horizontally oriented rather than vertical. The cover has a group shot of all the characters. The back has screenshots neatly aligned to a grid, which is not something you usually see. There's also a preview of what's inside. The box is made out of corrugated cardboard. It's not exactly the prettiest material ever. You can see the waviness on the surface, and the way it's assembled makes it look a bit parcely. There's a thumb cutout so you can easily open the box. Inside we have an art book, 2-disc soundtrack, some cardboard, and the game. The game has some cool artwork on it. I like how dynamic it looks. I think I've mentioned that in another video before. There's a lot of motion, it's bright and colorful. The back is a bit like the box, neat and tidy, and it does a good job of showing off the screenshots. On the inside we have a manual and disc. I really like how they printed the image on the back of the sleeve to give you a sort of background. It's definitely not meant to be flipped around because Rin and Misa would be on the back cover. The manual is cool because, guess what, it's in color. And it also actually does its job at being a manual because it covers characters, controls, and game modes. Very nice. The art book is very interesting. Just seeing an image of it might not be terribly exciting, but in real life you can see they used spot varnishing to make parts of the water shiny. It's a really cool idea and I was pleasantly surprised. On the inside there's character sheets, in-progress sketches, and things of that sort. All good stuff. Strangely, once you reach the later part of the art book, specifically the visual collection, the paper changes. It's thinner and slicker feeling. I have no idea why they did that. Lastly, there's the soundtrack. It's a paper-lined clear plastic sort of case. On the cover is Rin and a reluctant Misa, both in very frilly idol get-ups. The back is all in light blue, which isn't the most legible thing I've ever seen. The front image is cropped, but the designers didn't want the legs to go to waste, so they're on the CDs instead. And because the plastic is clear, you've got a sort of background going on as well. So overall, not bad. The cardboardy box does feel a little bit cheap, and that's really my only major complaint. So that's Kandagawa Jet Girls. I hope that was helpful. Unfortunately, the game wasn't what I expected, but I still managed to get some fun out of it. Of course, this is my opinion only, so if you have experience with this game, please comment about your experience. Hopefully that'll help everyone who's trying to find some information on Kandagawa Jet Girls. If you like the videos I make, consider supporting the channel through Patreon. Early access to videos, shout out at the end of the videos, and update posts are what you can expect over there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.